Hello, Assalamu alaikum. I hope all of you are doing good. I'm Dr. Namfez, and today we are going to start with the reproductive pharmacology. First of all, are GnRH analogs, that is gonadotropin releasing hormone analogs, goserelin and leuprolide. Goserelin, leuprolide, and the third one is biserelin. That's a new one added in the previous medications. These all are GnRH analogs, and there are two ways in which these medications are used. One way is the pulsatile fashion, and the next way is the continuous fashion. Why do we give this GnRH analogs in two different ways? Whenever we are giving this medication in a pulsatile fashion, then these GnRH agonists do what? They act as the actual agonist, just like gonadotropin releasing hormone. But when we use this GnRH analogs in a continuous fashion, they act transiently as a GnRH analogs in the start. That's called tumor flare. But subsequently, they act as GnRH antagonist. Because of saturation, there is downregulation of the gonadotropin releasing hormone receptors in the pituitary. So when they start acting as a GnRH antagonist, that is gonadotropin releasing hormone antagonist, it leads to decreased follicular stimulating hormone, that is decreased FSH and decreased LH. Clinical uses of these GnRH analogs. We use these medications in uterine fibroids, in endometriosis, in precocious puberty, in prostate cancer, as well as in infertility. So whenever we are in the need of increased FSH and LH production, we need it in the pulsatile fashion. For instance, if a lady comes with infertility, or if a woman wants that she is not able to give birth to babies, or there is delay in the egg release, then we can give this medication in the pulsatile fashion. While when we are giving this medication in a continuous fashion, we are using it, our purpose is to use it as a antagonist. So in the women who have uterine fibroids, or those women who have increased endometrial thickness, or if there is precocious puberty, early puberty, or there is prostate cancer, then in all those conditions we will give this medication in a continuous fashion. There are some other forms of GnRH analogs that are newer. They are neferelin and hysterelin. There are some adverse effects of this as well. These adverse effects are hypogonadism, decreased libido, erectile dysfunction, nausea and vomiting. Next comes a digarelix. Digarelix is a gonadotropin releasing hormone antagonist. There is no startup flared in the use of digarelix. It's an antagonist, so we can use it in the prostate cancer patients, but digarelix causes hot flashes and liver toxicity. Next are estrogens. The estrogens are ethinyl estradiol and diethylstilbestrol and mestranol. So there are three commonly used estrogens analogs or estrogens. These are ethinyl estradiol, diethylstilbestrol and mestranol. What is their mechanism of action? Estrogens binds estrogen receptors. We can use these estrogens in hypogonadism or ovarian failure. Then comes the menstrual abnormalities. The women who come with the menstrual abnormalities, we always recommend combined oral contraceptive pills, that is combined OCPs. And in those combined OCPs, we know that it contains estrogen and progesterone. So ethinyl estradiol, diethylstilbestrol and mestranol can be used as estrogens in those OCPs. Then as a hormone replacement therapy in postmenopausal women, these estrogens can be used. So we talked about estrogens usage in hypogonadism, ovarian failure, menstrual abnormalities as an HRT in postmenopausal women. HRT is hormonal replacement therapy. What are the adverse effects of increased estrogens? Increased risk of endometrial cancer when given without progesterone. It is very important when you give estrogens without progesterone, it increases the risk of endometrial cancer. These estrogens can cause bleeding in postmenopausal women. These estrogens can increase the risk of clear cell adenocarcinoma of vagina in females who are exposed to diethylstilbestrol in utero. In most of the exam, this is asked that diethylstilbestrol is responsible for which of the following. In most of the foreign MCQs, especially in the USMLE and UK exams, in that you have to keep it in mind that diethylstilbestrol causes clear cell adenocarcinoma of the vagina in females. There is also increased risk of thrombi, so estrogen causes thrombus formation. Then there are some contraindications for the estrogens. In the women who have estrogen receptor positive breast cancer, in the women who have history of deep vein thrombosis, DVT, in the women who use tobacco. So tobacco usage in women who are greater than 35 years old, you cannot give estrogen. So in whatever situation they ask you in long scenarios, you should keep it in mind that you cannot prescribe estrogens in a woman with ER positive breast cancer, in a woman having DVT, or anyone with a history of DVT. And third is the tobacco usage in women who are greater than 35 years old. Next comes selective estrogen receptors modulators. SERMs, SERMs. Selective estrogen receptor modulators, these include clomiphene, tamoxifen, and raloxifene. Clomiphene, it's an antagonist at estrogen receptors in the hypothalamus. We know that from the hypothalamus, gonadotropin releasing hormone comes and it acts on the ovarian receptors and causes a release of FSH and LH. And when there is enough quantity of these ovarian hormones FSH and LH, it back signals the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus has receptor for FSH and LH to stop the production of further gonadotropin releasing hormone. In this situation, what is happening that these clomiphene containing medications, they act as antagonists of estrogen receptors in the hypothalamus. So whenever there is enough signals from the hypothalamus and there is production of FS and LH, that is normal quantity of FS and LH is produced, and when the FSH and LH back signals the hypothalamus, those hypothalamus receptors are already blocked by clomiphene medications, that is selective estrogen receptor modulator. So clomiphene has blocked the hypothalamus receptor. So now the hypothalamus will not receive the signals from ovarian hormones, that is FSH and LH. As a result, there would be more and more production of FS and LH because hypothalamus has not received the signals that hypothalamus has to stop the production of GnRH. Just because hypothalamus does not know that there is enough FSH and LH production, because FS and LH are not able to enter the hypothalamus, are not able to knock the door of the hypothalamus because clomiphene has blocked their way. So the clomiphene prevents normal feedback inhibition and increases release of LH and FSH from pituitary. in a simple way, which stimulates ovulation. So, what are the uses of clomiphene? Most of the women who have PCOS, they have an ovulation. They come for fertility purpose, and they want to become fertile. They want to have children. So, in that case, for infertility in PCOS, to treat an ovulation PCOS, the gynecologist recommend clomiphene as a fertility medicine. But still, there are some side effects of the clomiphene. These are hot flashes, then ovarian enlargement, then multiple simultaneous pregnancies, and visual disturbances. This is a very important question that we miss. We remember hot flashes, ovarian enlargement, and multiple simultaneous pregnancies, but we forget that the clomiphene also causes visual disturbances. Next comes tamoxifen. Tamoxifen, it's also an antagonist, but it has two functions. It is antagonist at the breast and agonist at the bone and uterus. So it has benefit as well, it has some disadvantage. The benefit of tamoxifen is that it acts as an antagonist at the breast and agonist at the bone and uterus. The bones, there is anabolism in the bones. The bones grow with estrogen. So when tamoxifen acts as an agonist at the bone, it causes bone growth. Bones become strong. But on the same side, when it acts as an agonist at the uterus, it causes endometrial growth. So that's why we have to be very careful. With the tamoxifen use, there is increased risk of thromboembolism, thromboembolic events, especially with smoking status, if the woman or the person is a smoker or tobacco intaker. And as I talked, that tamoxifen is an agonist at the uterus, so it causes endometrial cancer as well. It increases the risk of endometrial cancer. Tamoxifen is used to treat and prevent recurrence of estrogen receptor and progesterone receptor positive breast cancer. As I talked in the start, it acts as an antagonist of the breast receptors. So it is helpful in treating women with the breast cancers, the women who have ER positive or PR positive cancer of the breast. There is another use of tamoxifen. It is used to prevent gynecomastia in patients undergoing prostate cancer therapy. Next comes raloxifene. Raloxifene, it also acts as an antagonist at the breast as well as uterus and agonist at the bone. That's why raloxifene is preferred over tamoxifen, because raloxifene, it's not only acts as an antagonist at the breast, but also it acts as an antagonist at the uterus, and it prevents endometrial cancer. In other words, it doesn't increase the risk of endometrial cancer. But still, with the use of raloxifene like tamoxifen, there is increased risk of thromboembolic events, especially with smoking. But there is no increase of endometrial cancer, as I talked earlier. Raloxifene is specifically used for the treatment of osteoporosis because it acts as an agonist at the bone, just like tamoxifen. Next comes aromatase inhibitors. Aromatase is an enzyme that converts androstenedione to estrone. We know that there is a process through chemical process through which hormones comes into its final form or final stage. So ovaries, they release androstenedione, then an enzyme called aromatase acts on androstenedione and converts androstenedione to estrone. Similarly, this aromatase enzyme converts testosterone to estradiol. So, aromatase inhibitors, there are certain drugs that the scientists develop that inhibit the aromatase enzyme. These drugs are anastrozole, letrozole, and exemestane. So these drugs are aromatase inhibitors. Anastrozole, letrozole, and exemestane. Aromatase inhibitors prevents the conversion of peripheral conversion of androgens to estrogen. Clinical usage, these are used in estrogen receptor positive breast cancer in postmenopausal women. Anastrozole also used in breast cancer patients because it decreases the production of estrogen. These drugs are effective in postmenopausal women because premenopausal women produce too much estrogen and these drugs are not effective. So this is very important. Next comes hormonal replacement therapy. Hormonal replacement therapy are used for relief or prevention of menopausal symptoms, for example, hot flashes, vaginal atrophy, osteoporosis. Hormonal replacement therapy increases estrogen in the bone and decreases osteoclast activity. So that's why HRT helps with osteoporosis. Unopposed estrogen replacement therapy increases risk of endometrial cancer. Progesterone is added. We know that unopposed estrogen replacement therapy increases risk of endometrial cancer. Progesterone is added, that's why, to prevent that risk of endometrial cancer. Possibly there is increased cardiovascular risk with the use of these hormonal replacement therapy. Next come progestins. Progestins are levonorgestrel, medroxyprogesterone, etonogestrel, norethindrone, and megestrel. These progestins bind progesterone receptors. There is decreased growth and increased vascularization of the endometrium. It also causes thickness of the cervical mucus. So progestins, they bind the progesterone receptors that causes decreased growth and increased vascularization of the endometrium. Progesterones also increases the thickness of cervical mucosa. Clinical uses, progestins, these are contraceptive forms, include pill, intrauterine device, implants, depot injections. Then their usage not only include as an OCPs as a combined drug with the estrogens for contraception, but also these progesterones are given for the treatment of endometrial cancer, for abnormal uterine bleeding. There is a test called progestin challenge test. So in progestin challenge, there is presence of withdrawal bleeding that helps us to exclude anatomical defect like Asherman syndrome and chronic anevolution without estrogen. So whenever we give progestin, basically in this test, whenever we give progestin to the patient and we take back the or stop the usage of progestin, there is withdrawal bleeding. But in the women who has some anevolution, chronic anevolution, or there is some structure abnormalities, then progestin withdrawal will not cause bleeding. That's called withdrawal bleeding. So progestin challenge help us to differentiate anatomical difficulties like Asherman syndrome or any other anatomical difficulties from as well as chronic anevolution from the normal issues. Next comes antiprogestins. These are mifepristone and ulipristal. The mechanism of antiprogestins, these are competitive inhibitors of progestins at the progesterone receptors. Antiprogestins, these are what? These are competitive inhibitors of progestins at progesterone receptors. We use antiprogestins for termination of pregnancy. This is very important, like mifepristone with misoprostol as an emergency contraceptives, for example, ulipristal. So ulipristal and mifepristone, these are antiprogestins, and we are using it as an emergency contraceptive for termination of pregnancy. Next comes combined oral contraceptives, progestins and ethinyl estradiol. Progestins and ethinyl estradiol, these include pills, patches, vaginal ring. Estrogen and progesterone inhibit LH and FSH, and this prevents estrogen surge. When the LH and FSH are inhibited, there will be no estrogen surge. No estrogen surge leads to no LH surge, leads to no ovulation. So whenever we stop the production of FSH and LH, it leads to no ovulation. Progestins cause thickness of cervical mucosa as well, thereby limiting the access of sperms to the uterus. Progestins also inhibit endometrial proliferation. Endometrial thickness is less suitable to the implantation of an embryo. Endometrium is less suitable to the implantation of an embryo. Now, there are some adverse effects as well. Adverse effects include breakthrough menstrual bleeding, then breast tenderness, then venous thromboembolism. There are some women who develop hepatic adenomas. There are some contraindications for the use of combined oral contraceptives. These contraindications include smokers who are greater than 35 years, and the people who have increased risk of cardiovascular events, patients with increased risk of venous thromboembolism, coronary artery disease, or stroke, etc. Women with the migraine, especially with migraine with aura. Then the one who have breast cancer or liver disease, these contraceptives are not given. In most of the exams, they ask about the contraindications of these combined oral contraceptives, and you have to keep it in mind. Anyone with the use of tobacco and age greater than 35 with cardiovascular issues or thromboembolisms issues or breast cancer or liver disease, we have to be careful and to not advise these OCPs in such patients. Then comes the intrauterine device. Copper intrauterine devices are most commonly used. These copper intrauterine devices produce local inflammatory reaction that is toxic to sperm and ova, preventing fertilization and implantation. These are hormone-free choices. The clinical use of copper intrauterine device includes long-acting reversible contraception, because we can keep that intrauterine device for 3 to 5 years, and it helps women with the long-term contraception. Most effective emergency contraception is the copper intrauterine device. Then comes the adverse effects of copper intrauterine device. There is heavier or longer menses. There is dysmenorrhea, increased risk of pelvic inflammatory disease with insertion, contraindicated in women who have active pelvic inflammatory disease, because intrauterine device may impede pelvic inflammatory disease resolution. Next comes tocolytics. Tocolytics are terbutaline, that are beta agonists, then nifedipine, calcium channel blocker, NSAIDs, as well as ondansetron. Tocolytics are basically a kind of medications that relax the uterus. So terbutaline, beta 2 agonist action, it will relax the uterus. Nifedipine, calcium channel blocker, then endomethacin, NSAID, these all are helping to relax the uterus. They are used to decrease contraction frequency in preterm labor and allow time for administration of steroids to promote fetal lung maturity or transfer to appropriate medical center with obstetrical care. Next comes danazole. Danazole is a synthetic androgen that acts as a partial agonist at the androgen receptors. It's a very amazing drug because it acts as a partial agonist. We can use danazole in endometriosis as well as in hereditary angioedema. And what is danazole? Danazole is a synthetic androgen analog. What are the side effects of danazole? Danazole causes weight gain, edema, acne, hirsutism, masculinization. It also causes decreased HDL level. That's a good lipid. It decreases high density lipids. It causes hepatotoxicity, idiopathic intracranial hypertension. So danazol is one of those many drugs that cause idiopathic intracranial hypertension. Then come testosterone, methyl testosterone. Testosterone, methyl testosterone, these are agonistic androgen receptors. This was asked in many of the exams and many times. Treat hypogonadism and promote development of secondary sexual characteristics, simulate anabolism, promote recovery after burn or injury. So, if a man comes and says to you that he has hypogonadism or he has some issues, and the test and further clinic examination and clinical laboratory tests confirms the presence of hypogonadism, you have to give testosterone or methyl testosterone that can help with the secondary sexual characteristic development. As well, if a patient comes with burn or injury, then testosterone acts as a anabolic hormone to promote the recovery in such patients. There are some adverse effects of testosterone. It causes masculinization in females. There is decreased intratesticular testosterone in males by inhibiting release of LH via negative feedback. When we give intratesticular testosterone in males, it inhibits the release of LH. Whenever there is inhibition of the release of LH via negative feedback, there is gonadal atrophy. It also causes premature closure of epiphyseal plates, increase LDH and decrease HDL. So it increases bad lipid and decreases good lipids. So these are side effects of these. I'm repeating again the side effects. There are some side effects of testosterone as well. It causes masculinization in females. As well, in males, it causes decreased intratesticular testosterone by inhibiting the release of luteinizing hormone via negative feedback. As a result, males can have gonadal atrophy due to use of testosterone. It also causes premature closure of epiphyseal plates in pubertal stages and then the growing bones. It also causes decreased HDL and increased LDL. So it increases bad lipid and decreases good lipid. Next comes anti-androgens. These are finasteride, that is 5-alpha reductase inhibitor. Then flutamide, that is non-steroidal competitive inhibitor at androgen receptors. Then ketoconazole, that inhibits steroid synthesis at 1720 desmolase enzyme level or 17-alpha hydrolase enzyme level in the steroid or in the hormonal synthesis pathway. Then comes spironolactone, that also inhibits steroid binding and or block the 17-alpha hydroxylase, just like ketoconazole. You will think that ketoconazole is an antifungus, spironolactone is a potassium-sparing diuretic, but yeah, these two of the also act as anti-androgen medications. So, anti-androgens. Finasteride is a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor. It decreases the conversion of testosterone to dihydrotestosterone. It's used for benign prostatic hyperplasia and in male pattern baldness. Once upon a time, there was a action. Once this question was repeatedly asked, that what medication would you prescribe for male pattern baldness? So 5-alpha reductase inhibitors, finasteride, is useful. The adverse effects of anti-estrogen finasteride is gynecomastia and sexual dysfunction, as well as decreased libido and impaired erectile function sometimes. Then comes flutamide, bicalutamide, apalutamide, and enzalutamide. These are non-steroidal competitive inhibitors at androgen receptors, and these are used for prostate carcinoma. Side effects similar to the above one, like gynecomastia, sexual dysfunction. Bicalutamide added with buserelin, that is a gonadotropin releasing hormone, to prevent testosterone surge effect from buserelin therapy. So whenever we are giving buserelin therapy, it causes testosterone surge. Then we add bicalutamide to prevent that surge, because bicalutamide acts as anti-androgen. It's a non-steroidal competitive inhibitor at androgen receptors. So these anti-androgens are being used for prostate carcinoma as well. Next comes ketoconazole. As I told earlier, ketoconazole and spironolactone both inhibit steroid synthesis at 1720 decimolase or 17 alpha hydroxylase level. Ketoconazole and spironolactone acts on the Leydig cells and inhibits testosterone synthesis, used in PCOS to reduce androgenic symptoms. The women with the PCOS have acne, hirsutism, different issues related to androgens. Their skin is affecting due to androgens. They have increased sweating, increased hair. So these anti-androgens, ketoconazole, spironolactone, are helpful in the PCOS women to reduce the androgenic symptoms. Reduce what? Androgenic symptoms. Both can cause gynecomastia and amenorrhea. So ketoconazole and spironolactone both can cause gynecomastia and amenorrhea. Then come tamsulosin. Tamsulosin is an alpha-1 antagonist used to treat benign prostatic hyperplasia by inhibiting smooth muscle contraction. Tamsulosin is alpha-1 antagonist used to treat benign prostatic hyperplasia by inhibiting smooth muscle contraction, selective for alpha-1A-D receptors found on prostate with vascular alpha-1B receptors. So we have to keep it in mind that tamsulosin is an alpha-1 antagonist, but it is acting on alpha-1 selective receptors on the prostate to prevent BPH, to treat the benign prostatic hyperplasia, because it inhibits smooth muscle contraction. And these receptors in the prostate are alpha-1A/D. Mean these are either alpha-1A or alpha-1D receptors. These are either alpha-1A or alpha-D receptors. While in the blood vessels, they are alpha-1B receptors. And for those we have terazosin, because terazosin is from the same class. Terazosin is also alpha-1 antagonist, but it is acting on alpha-1 beta receptors as well on the vessels to treat hypertension. So terazosin is that also treats hypertension and benign prostatic hyperplasia, but tamsulosin is unique because it doesn't affect the receptors on the blood vessels. It doesn't cause hypotension in patients who have normal blood pressure. So that's why we have to be careful while prescribing tamsulosin versus terazosin. So terazosin can be given in patients who have hypertension and BPH, but tamsulosin cannot be given in patients who have, but tamsulosin can be given in patients who have normal blood pressure, because tamsulosin doesn't affect receptors in the blood vessels. Then comes minoxidil. Minoxidil, it's a direct arteriolar vasodilator. The clinical uses of minoxidil is androgenetic alopecia, matron baldness. There are most of the guys who use some minoxidil spray, topical spray on their scalps to prevent that baldness, because it causes direct arteriolar vasodilation. Its use is also used in severe refractory hypertension. Patients who have progressive disease despite medical and surgical therapy are treated with abiraterone, which limits androgen production in the tumor. So there is another drug called abiraterone. It is used in benign prostatic hyperplasia or benign prostatic cancer. It is used in benign prostatic hyperplasia or cancer in patients who have progressive disease despite medical and surgical therapy. They are treated with abiraterone, which limits androgen production in the tumor, in the adrenal gland and testes by inhibiting the enzyme 17-alpha hydroxylase. So this is all about reproductive pathology. Let me revise it in a short way. First, we talked about GnRH analogs, and those GnRH analogs were goserelin, leuprolide, biserelin, neferelin, histrelin, and we said that they can be used in pulsatile fashion or continuous fashion, and the usage was different. Pulsatile was for infertility, and the continuous was for uterine fibroids, prostate cancer, endometriosis, precocious puberty. Then we talked about dagarelix, that is a GnRH antagonist. There is no start flare in the dagarelix. Then estrogens, ethinyl estradiol, diethylstilbestrol, mestranol. Selective estrogen receptors modulators, clomiphene, tamoxifen, loxifene, and then we talked about why loxifene is preferred in the bone issues, in the osteoporosis. And tamoxifen is antagonist at the breast, while agonist at the bone and uterus. While aloxifene was antagonist at the breast as well as at the uterus and agonist at the bone. So tamoxifen causes uterine cancer, endometrial cancer, but aloxifene doesn't cause endometrial cancer. Then there were aromatase inhibitors for use in breast cancer in postpasomanial women with estrogen receptor positivity. Those aromatase inhibitors were anastrozole, letrozole, exemestane. Then we talked about hormonal replacement therapy. We know that hormonal replacement therapy comes in the combination of progesterone and estrogens. And the progestins are levonorgestrel, medroxyprogesterone, etonogestrel, norethindrone, megestrol. Most of the people think that norethindrone is estrogen, but norethindrone is a progestin. Next, there are certain anti-progesterones like mifepristone, ulipriston we were using as an emergency contraceptive. Then we talked about combined contraceptions, their usage, their contraindications, then copper intrauterine device, then tocolytics, they were from different classes, then danazole was synthetic androgen that was acting as a partial agonist at the androgen receptors for endometriosis and heteroangioedema, then testosterone and methyl testosterone that were acting as agonists at the androgen receptors. We were using testosterone for hypogonadism and for the development of secondary sexual characteristics. Then anti-androgens that were acting at the 5-alpha reductase inhibitor to stop the production of dihydrotestosterone from testosterone. This was finasteride. Then there were some competitive inhibitors at the androgen receptors like glutamide, bicalutamide, apalutamide, enzalutamide. Then we talked about ketoconazole and spironolactone that were also acting as anti-androgen. Then we differentiated the tamsulosin from terazosin, that how terazosin can also be helpful in treatment of hypertension, but tamsulosin cannot. That is specific for prostate receptors. Then we talked about minoxidil, that is a direct arterial vasodilators for baldness or androgenic alopecia, and we also said that minoxidil also helps in severe refractory hypertension. So this is all about today reproductive pharmacology. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed today. Please like, share and subscribe my channel. There is more to come. Thank you so much. Take care. Allah Hafiz.